Hello everyone and welcome to my Perry today. I am thrilled to be talking tonight about sexual identity. I am, just happy that this was the topic that came up because so much is happening around sexual identity and it's ever growing and ever changing. And really, this is one of my favorite topics. So, I identify as a queer woman, and, to have that identity be so embraced in some ways, but also knowing that there's a lot of violence out there that's happening in our community and towards our community is really alarming. So I'm hoping that this is an educational video for people who may not know too much about it, and that for those who do know, maybe you learn something new, maybe you get inspired to start talking about this more with the people in your life, because it's definitely one of those topics that we assume people are okay with, but we don't always know. So what is our... Hi. So what is our sexual identity? So our sexual identity is really how we perceive our sexual expression, right? How we perceive ourselves as sexual beings. That includes so many things. The first is biological gender. Right? So how are we born? And that can be a number of things, right? You can be born male, female, intersex, androgynous, different. You might not know. And I actually want to share this little graphic. And I'll kind of step back so you can see it. And it's a model that comes from, it's pronounced metrosexual.com. I love this graphic that they came up with. And I use it often when I do workshops with youth, also in the community. When I go out and do presentations, I use this because it really gives you an idea of how within your sexual identity, right? This is all a graphic just about your sexual identity. You have different elements, right? You have different components of it. I do workshops in the tri-state area, so stay tuned. I am going to be doing some in New York City coming up. I'm setting the dates as we speak, so those will be interesting to attend. I hope you come out for those. There's also your gender identity, right? So often in our society, we don't even learn that there's a difference between gender and your biological sex, right? And usually when you hear the word sex, it's the physical act. So San Fran, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe this coming year, I'll go out to San Francisco, and while I'm there, do a workshop. So definitely, our gender identity is different from our biological sex. Sometimes there is alignment. No, I am from New York. How do you justify your lifestyle with your faith? That's a good question. That's a really good question. I believe in oneness. I believe in, I was born perfect, right? So whatever my identity is, I think it's the way I'm meant to be. And I don't see my spirituality any separate from my sexuality, right? I actually think that they're very much connected. So for me, there is not much conflict between my faith and my sexuality or my lifestyle. But I know that for some people, depending on what religion you were raised with, there might be some conflict. And I just, I invite you to take everything with curiosity and really challenge yourself to think about whether or not you really believe in that. If deep down that's your belief or a belief that was given to you. Sometimes we really do not know subconsciously. It's all subconscious that things that were taught to us are so deeply ingrained, yet they are not really how we feel. So just explore what really is your belief, what is your faith. I'd love to talk more about that on a different Perry. Amen. Amen. God created us all the way we are for a reason. It's our job to find the answer why. Thank you for that comment. Really appreciate that. So another part of our sexual identity is our gender roles, right? And this is really one of the topics that I am fascinated by, because I've studied sexuality across cultures, and it varies. Internet sexual alter ego, how okay is that? I mean, the internet is a space where you can really explore your fantasies, explore different lifestyles, different curiosities, right? And sometimes we do want to do that in anonymity. Yeah, and thank you, John, for saying that. Depends on if you're deceiving others. I think that's exactly where I was about to go with that. Because it's okay to explore and discover and really get to know what's out there. But if you're, hurting or deceiving others, or, betraying someone, that's definitely something that may not be in alignment with who you want to be. Thank you, everyone, for joining. The other aspect of our sexual identity that I was just talking about, gender roles, they vary across cultures, but there's very much very strict guidelines that are assigned to different genders. For example, I currently have like a few friends who are in the pregnancy phase, and it's so fascinating to me how soon into a pregnancy people begin to guess the biological sex, but really saying, not saying it's a male or female, but saying, oh, is it a boy or a girl? And really, boy or girl, that's gender identity, which really doesn't happen for children until they're like 3 to 5 years old is when they begin really to express their gender identity. Some may experience it earlier. There's some transgender children that grow up and say, I knew at 2, I knew at 1.5 that I was not in the right body for myself. But really, based on human development, it happens more towards the age of 3 to 5. So that's when gender develops. Your biological sex, you're born with it. Sometimes it's ambiguous, right? So you might have different chromosomes, or your genitalia is not well defined. So you have to wait a while or do genetic testing to figure out what's what. If it's male, female, or an intersex. But we already begin prescribing a gender as soon as someone is showing or informs people that they're pregnant. And I say this example really to highlight how in our society it's so deeply ingrained, this concept of gender, of, you know, boys wear blue and girls wear pink, and some of that has been broken down recently in the last, like, I would say 2 decades. But there's still a lot of that deeply ingrained in our psyche and our collective consciousness, and we're constantly coming up against that, right? When when transgender women are being abused constantly across the country, that's on some level because there is a misunderstanding, and a lot of people are scared of what they don't know, or anything that goes against societal norm. And, you know, a lot of people follow societal norms, even though they may not always be what they believe in. It's what they were taught. So I challenge you to challenge those beliefs if you have them, to you know, share your beliefs with others. You know, sharing is so important. I think that's how we learn from one another. That's how we grow. That's how we connect with other people. You know, last night I spoke about intimacy, and definitely sharing and disclosing of oneself, one's identity, is definitely something that helps bond you with someone. And then the last component of, you know, sexual identity that I want to talk about tonight is your sexual orientation, right? And that's, you know, are you heterosexual, bisexual, homosexual, gay, you know, really gay, lesbian, trans is a gender expression, a gender identity. So that's different. And often, you know, we have the term LGBTQ, and people think that the transgender is part of your sexual orientation, and it's actually your gender identity. So I just wanted to clarify that. And often, you know, just to talk a little bit about the trans community, there's a lot of stigma out there towards them. And, you know, I love my trans sisters, and where am I from? I'm from New York. I love, you know, they're beautiful human beings. They're just amazing beings, and it's so sad that there's so much violence out there towards them because of old beliefs and misunderstandings about gender and sexuality as a whole. How old am I? I am 27. You know, so that is sexual orientation. You know, it's connected to who are you physically attracted to, spiritually attracted to, sexually attracted to, emotionally attracted to, right? And, you know, you may have one sexual orientation. I'm a sex educator, activist, organizer, entrepreneur. And your sexual orientation doesn't always align with your sexual preferences. It doesn't always align. You know, you might identify as heterosexual, but engage in sex with the same gender. And, you know, that is okay, because in reality, no one can tell you what you are. It's a self-identifying system. You know, you can say it's a boy or you know, he to someone, but until that person self-identifies that way, it is an assumption. So that's something I really want to drive home, that this entire process of sexual identity, it's all self-identifying. So if you don't consider yourself queer, regardless of what your sexual behaviors are, that's okay. But I also want to caution, you know, don't just not identify a certain way because you're scared. Because that's a huge thing that happens. There's so much fear out there around sexuality, around being accepted, right? And gender identity, sexual orientation have been historically reasons why people have been outcasted. You know, violence towards them to this day. There's violence out there towards the LGBTQ community. So definitely, you know, challenge those norms, challenge the world to embrace our brothers and sisters who are from that community, who might identify differently, and really see the difference and embrace the difference. You know, I think it's so fascinating that, you know, we might want to engage in sex with one person, but be in love with another type of person, and our gender identity is completely different from any of those people, and it might just vary throughout our lives. So you might go from, you know, exploring at one point in your life, and then really realize, you know what, I really enjoy heterosexual monogamous relationships, and that's what I want to do. So it's really fascinating how fluid our sexuality is, and sexuality is so fluid, you know, especially for women. At what age can we start to talk about that? Talk about what with who? Feel free to answer. If you're talking about at what age can we talk about sexuality with children, I say as early as they can comprehend words. So, you know, there's different levels of understanding, right? For children at different ages, they need to know different things. But educating about sexuality, I believe, begins as soon as they can comprehend, yes, as soon as they can comprehend words. So one of the things that I've done a lot when I do community workshops with parents, you know, at a previous job, I would do that a lot. Now it's a little less, but I'm still out there trying to do different workshops, is really talking about what's appropriate at what age, right? So when a child is a toddler and is learning to explore their body, right? You know, you want to talk about what's appropriate to do in front of other people. And, you know, kids touch themselves because that just feels good. So if that's the case, you want to talk about that. You don't want to just ignore the behavior because, or tell them it's wrong, because then, you know, they are understanding not the behavior is wrong, the entire, or that it's wrong to do it in that space or in that way. They're understanding that in some way they are wrong, their genitals are wrong, right? It's wrong to even touch that. And that can really be detrimental to someone's sexual development. So I will leave it there with that topic about sexuality with children, but I will definitely do a parry on that since you asked. I think some other people might be interested in listening to that topic. So another element that I wanted to talk about, and this I'll do a longer. Sí, exactamente. Another element that I wanted to talk about is gender expression, right? And that means like how masculine or feminine on that spectrum someone is, right? So you can be a lesbian and be masculine. You can be a lesbian and be feminine. You can be straight and be on that spectrum. And there's men who are feminine and women who are masculine. So it's not necessarily associated with your biological sex or your gender expression. And it's really key to see that these can really exist separately, but then somehow align as well for each person in a different way. So, and gender expression, it's so interesting, you know, because I'll talk more about this in another Perry, but gender expression, it comes from almost that the energies around us, right? This masculine and femininity, right? It comes from nature. That's the original place where it happens, right? That yin and yang, you know, positive, negative energies, different vibrations, you know, Mother Earth, Father Sky. That's that duality, right? That's that duality that exists across our reality here on Earth in this three-dimensional platform that we are on. That is part of it. Duality is part of it. That is, you know, if you look at, you know, there's your higher self and you, God and us. So there's that duality consistently seen throughout our existence. And that's to be embraced, right? Embrace your masculinity, your femininity, play it up, be playful with it. It's definitely fun to express ourselves through all of these, right? And to explore all of these for ourselves, right? You know, you might know very early on, so that's Buddhist. I mix it all up. I mix so much up. I've studied a lot of different things, and across all borders, I see unity. I see oneness, and I think truth with a capital T, no matter what the thought is, right? The theory, the theology, if it's true, it can be expressed in so many different ways. And no matter how you phrase it, it's there. You can't change the essence of it, right? You can say, there's something beyond me, right? That can be the sky. And that's as far as you think is beyond you. Or, you know, the earth has energy, and that's energy outside of me, but I don't believe in God. Some people might believe in God. Some people might believe in angels. Some people might believe in Buddha. You know, there's so much out there, Allah, just various deities. It all comes down to there is energy out there outside of me. And there is energy in here inside of me. So those two energies are that there's a duality there. And that shows up in so many unique ways in all of us. It shows up definitely here in our little gender person through our expression, our sex, our orientation, and our identity. How we think about ourselves, how we feel, and what we do. And then who we are as a whole, as sexual beings, right? That's the whole of it. So I hope you all enjoy this scope. I definitely did. I know that these are definitely topics that I could do an entire Periscope on just one of these. This series is meant to be very much a helicopter view of sexuality and all of the different elements, components, facets of it. And stay tuned. Tomorrow night, I will give you a sneak peek now. Tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about sexual health and reproduction. And that is definitely a huge area of expertise of mine. I work at a reproductive health organization currently during the day and do this work nights and weekends and in the mornings. So it's definitely going to be a juicy conversation. There's going to be talking about values and different ideas and beliefs about various things that have to do with that. So I am really looking forward to that conversation as well. This night and tomorrow night are probably my favorite topics to talk about. So until tomorrow, have a sexy, passionate night. See you later.